he was
That's
very
the reaction that I love getting, where you're just like, oh, like this is what's happening. Like, I think that's always like a fun reaction for me because everyone has their own ideas and thoughts of what women's wrestling is. And then I always like to kind of be the surprise there for that. What's up, guys? It's Savannah Evans here with Wrestling Road Stories. How's it going?
Doing well.
Doing good. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. All right, so we'll jump right into it. What would you consider to be your worst road story?
My absolute worst road story, because it ends horribly. I used to work with High Spots, I used to work for High Spots for about 5 or 6 years. So I got to do a lot of like going on the road with them, working the merch table, like unloading the truck, all that fun stuff at conventions and all that. So one time we had done maybe the big event, one of the conventions up north. So we had driven up, the owner, Michael, myself, and at the time, my friend Maureen, who was currently my friend Maureen, but at the time was the office manager at High Spot. So the three of us drove up. We did the convention, unloaded, loaded, all that stuff, full day of signing. And then we got on the road to get back home. And I think at first I wasn't sure, like, are we staying like the night before we get back on the road or not? So no, we were not staying the night before we got back on the road. So we got back on the road. Michael was going to drive, I think, the majority of the leg. And then he wanted me and Maureen to finish off the drive. So he did get the majority of it done. I think there was like 4.5, maybe 5 hours left. So it was time to switch driving. So I was like, okay, I'll drive next. I had gotten in like a little bit of a nap before. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just, do my portion and then Maureen will do her portion. So needless to say, after like an hour and some change, I started getting sleepy. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like, are we gonna, you know what I mean? Like, why are we still driving? Yes, we're kind of, over halfway, but why are we still driving? So I get sleepy and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pull off at the next rest stop. Before I can pull off, I fall asleep. We skid along the guardrail. So we're driving a transit van, like a huge utility transit van. The airbags go off. So when the airbags go off, it's not just, the driver's side. It's like the whole side of the vehicle, like a raft, basically, like inflates inside the vehicle. I wake up screaming because I'm like, oh shit, I fell asleep. Michael grabs the wheel. He's in the passenger seat, grabs the wheel and starts turning it. So then the car goes from skidding along the guardrail to doing a full 360 into the next lane and just barely tapping the other guardrail. And I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? So we get out of the car. No one's hurt. No one hits us. It was just like a moment. You know what I mean? Like, why are we still on this trip? Why are we still driving? It was ridiculous. So needs to say, my worst trip was totaling the High Spots transit van. It was completely totaled. We couldn't even like drive it to the next exit or anything because, I don't know, the vehicle has some type of mechanism. Like once it's been damaged, like the seat belts won't retract. So they were all loose, just hanging on the floor. And we couldn't really go anywhere because, again, we have like raft-sized airbags hanging in the way. So we can't see anything. It was ridiculous. Our friend Zane drove 2 hours because I guess by that time we were 2 hours from Charlotte. Our friend Zane drove 2 hours from Charlotte to come get us. And yeah, the van was completely totaled. So happy that no one was hurt, but it was just like, this is a nightmare trip, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of like wild trips with High Spots in general. One year we drove from Charlotte to Dallas I think it was 2016. They had WrestleCon in Dallas that year. And it was just like 2.5 days of driving, literally through, Alabama, through Louisiana, through Texas. It was just another nightmare, but I guess not as exciting of an ending as crashing and totaling a van. But that's my worst road story.
That is funny, and the only reason why it's funny, it's scary, but it's funny, is because Caleb's story was very similar. Yeah. He didn't reckon his, but he did break down a couple times and had
yeah. So these days it's a little bit nicer because I think they get flown places a lot now. But like back in the day, it was rough. Like those trips were really, really rough.
Let's get a good road story. What would you consider to be your best road story?
Oh man, this one I didn't think as much about, so I'm really gonna have to take a minute. I mean, honestly, any road story that doesn't involve me crashing is great. Going on trips, obviously, with my friends because it helps pass the time better. But sometimes I really like traveling by myself if it's just a few hours. Because you get to like reflect and spend time with yourself, I guess. I don't know. In wrestling, that's kind of hard to do sometimes because we're everywhere. We're always doing something on the go, always thinking about the next thing. A good road story. So when I don't know, the carloads change so often, but I work for a promotion in Florida called Fest. And so it's always like a huge carload of people that drive down. But I like going to Fest because the crew that I go with here recently, usually they like to head down there like very early before the sun rises, and that's not the fun part. The fun part is once you actually get into Florida, and then we just kind of stop and have like family breakfast for a little bit, and then we go on to the show. But I always love that because it's like so many people you don't see too often, so it's good catching up, and they're all like family. So I always appreciate that. Usually, it's always the North Carolina crew. It's Rayhan and Tez, and usually TJ Boss as well because they're the tag champs down there. And sometimes it's like a different cast of characters along with the three of us. But I don't know. I just like that family time, and I look forward to it for whatever reason. Maybe it's because, like I was saying, sometimes it's hard to catch up with people in wrestling because we're all busy doing our own thing. And when we do have a moment to sit down and just hang out, eat breakfast, whatever, it's always favorite for me. A lot of these trips, you just as soon as you get going, you're like, man, it's time to go home yet? But I always look forward to that one.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense. I mean, like especially if you're traveling with your friends, and when you get to your location, you guys have to go to work, right?
Yes.
So the time that you have before that is really where all the family time is, essentially.
Exactly. Even like some of the driving is basically work too. So it's like work, work, work. Here's a break for a second. Back to work.
No, that makes sense.
So we just have like a short list of questions that we like to ask everyone. The first one I want to ask you is, what is your go-to place to grab food when you're out traveling?
I guess it also time of day is very crucial with that question as well. When it's like after a show, you're limited with what is open and then what is easily accessible from the highway because you're driving back home. Waffle House is always a favorite. I know it's a dirty truck stop, but it's the go-to because if you have time to sit for a minute, it's Waffle House. If you don't, you're lucky to grab like, Wendy's or Cookout if you're just doing a drive-through because you got to get back home. I know a lot of people say Buc-ee's, but I don't really get the Buc-ee's hype. I mean, I'm not against ever stopping there, but I'm just like, okay, it's like I don't know, it's like a Walmart branded like gas station. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's anything you could find at a grocery store, just branded for Buc-ee's. I don't know. But everyone always has the big debate. Well, is it Wawa over Sheetz? I like Wawa. I'm not saying Sheetz is bad, but I like the different customization you get from Wawa. It's like you get your sandwich, you can customize it however you want to. And Sheetz is kind of just like, I just think it's more fried food, I guess. Maybe like more mozzarella sticks and fries and chicken tenders.
It is definitely. Now, I love that you said Waffle House. Like, do you have like a standard Waffle House order?
Yes, I do.
What is it? Do you mind sharing it?
So it's usually the first order. Sometimes I'll get the second one. So it just depends on what mood I'm in. My go-to order is, I don't even think they really have it on the menu anymore. It's like a 2-egg breakfast. So I double the eggs, so it's 4, and I add cheese, jalapenos, mushrooms. The toast is raisin toast. I do the hash browns and bacon. and it's my favorite. That's my go-to. It's great. I love it every time. Sometimes if I'm in like a rare weird mood, I'll get like the steak and eggs or something.
Do you do your hash browns regular? Like I do my hash browns scattered covered.
Oh no, I just do the hash browns regular. They just get ketchup or hot sauce.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I also do the hash browns regular. I asked for them scattered well because I like them crispy.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I'm also a Waffle House girl, so I love when you said that. That was great.
It's like an easy go-to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's great. And I spent some time out west when I was traveling in my RV a few years ago with my husband, and there weren't any Waffle Houses. Like we were in Wyoming, so there were no Waffle Houses. And like I didn't realize how much I wanted Waffle House until I couldn't get it. So
Yes.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Well, the next question I have for you is a two-part question. Who was your first favorite wrestler, and who is your current favorite wrestler?
My first favorite wrestler is The Rock. And I would really almost say he's still my current favorite wrestler, but I know he's not actively like full-time wrestling, obviously. But yeah, first favorite wrestler was The Rock. My dad had been trying to get me to watch wrestling for like a while, and I was just never super interested. And then one time, my uncles and my grandpa had like an episode, I think of like Nitro on or something. We were over at the house at their place, and I kind of sat down and watched it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So then when we got back home and my dad was watching his wrestling, which he watched WWF, I was like, okay, let me sit down and watch this. And The Rock was on. And then every week I wanted to tune in and see what The Rock was doing, just because his character was so like, I guess, big and outlandish. You just wanted to see what he was doing next. So definitely first favorite wrestler and favorite wrestler of all time is The Rock. Current favorite wrestler, I guess that can be a bit tricky, but I'll stick with WWE, seeing as that's how my first question was. I also am a real big fan of Randy Orton, and I know he's currently injured and whatnot with surrounding that, but just such a great overall wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And it's the little things too. I think a lot of people overlook how much just the very tiny things he does. I don't know. It has like a big effect, you know, and I've always wanted to be like that kind of a wrestler. And I think in certain places, like especially on the indies, it's hard to do that because people aren't watching every week. So they don't see, you know, they don't pay attention to like the little things. They can only see what is there presented to them in that moment. But yeah, I would say Randy Orton.
Who is your favorite person to wrestle?
Oh, so for a little bit before the pandemic, I had I guess it was a best 2 out of 3 match with Lindsay Snow on the indies. And I loved wrestling her. She's just like competitive wise, like I think we just match up very well. You know, our styles and the different stories we're trying to tell and our characters that we're trying to get over. And it's also like not too I don't even know what the word is, but you know, like not the average female wrestler. You don't get that from either one of us. So I just always liked our dynamic.
Dude, you guys go hard.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. When you said Lindsay, I was like, yeah, she's awesome. I actually plan on when I'm working on myself right now, and once I get to where I want to be, I'm gonna get her to tattoo me.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I still want to get tattooed by her too.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna get a kaiju tattoo. So
nice.
I'm about it.
Do you have a Ricky Morton story?
So being in the Carolinas, I run into Ricky Morton very often. I will bring up two, not even stories, but just Ricky Morton moments, I guess. So my first, and I don't know how I, almost forgot this. My second match ever, my first night in wrestling, I tagged with Ricky Morton. So that was very cool for me, because how many people can say that? You know what I mean? It was just very fun. It was myself and my trainer George South. We teamed with Ricky Morton against Tessa Blanchard, who I had wrestled earlier in the night in my first ever match, and the Burke County Boys from $5 Wrestling, if anyone is up on their $5 Wrestling. So it was a cool, 3-on-3 match, and got to tag with Ricky Morton. Another great Ricky Morton moment. The past couple of years he's been, killing people with the Canadian Destroyer. It's just been his thing now. we were at a PWX show, and I believe it was a multi-man match, but Ricky walked into the locker room. He pointed to Patrick Scott and he said, "This is the guy that's gonna that's gonna do the Canadian Destroyer with her. This is the guy getting the Canadian Destroyer." And I was like, "That's just so classic." Like, you know what I mean? Like, you walk in the locker room, you're like, "Okay, that guy right there, that's the one." I mean, you do have to pick the right partner to dance with. So it was just funny.
Yeah. Oh, those are great.
They are. We love George, by the way. George, I see George at AML every month. I talk to him every month. Like I was just talking to him yesterday. You know, both of his kids had kids. So he was like within a week apart of each other. He was like granddad twice, and he's like on top of the world right now.
Yeah, he could talk forever about them. And George is such a national treasure. Anytime anyone brings up George South, I say national treasure because he is like just the best.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're planning an anthology for that guy. I just want him to come on here and just tell me stories. Tell me all of them. Like,
a million. He has a million stories.
Yes.
Every time I see him, he gives us a little something, and I'm just like, I need so much more. So
it's great. And especially like training with him, you know, it would be like, you know, years ago, and it would be like, okay, you know, everyone lock up. And so not everyone, but the two people in the ring with everyone outside watching. Two people in the ring, okay, lock up. So they lock up, and before he gives them the next, you know, thing, he'll just go off on, he'll start talking about something else. He's like, you know, the other day, blah, blah, blah. And like the two people that are locking up would then kind of like drop the lock. And he's like, okay, now lock up. And then they would lock up again. And again, he would just continue his story. And I'm like, he is messing with everyone right now. Like, just to see if they're paying attention. But just a great person. Hilarious.
Our final question is the question that we sent you earlier, because we like to give everybody a chance to think on it a little bit. If you could only watch one wrestling match for the rest of your life, what match would that be?
That would be, and this is very strictly like just based on like memories and like what it means to me and where I was when it happened. It's The Rock versus Austin from WrestleMania, the one, the title on the line. I think it was 17. Just because like the story build up to it was great, and I was really invested, obviously because I was younger, and who wasn't into wrestling during the late 90s and then of course the early 2000s. So that was just a great time for me. They were two of my favorite wrestlers. Like you really couldn't get two bigger, you know, wrestlers as far as popularity wise, than those two. And at that time, it was just like it was crazy. I just remember watching that match, and I was super invested. Everything popped me, and everything leading up to it was cool too, you know, like Angle's involvement and Deborah, Vince, all that stuff. So that I could just watch that match a million times. I could watch it on loop in the background while I'm doing something else. I could watch it, you know, and be as invested as I was back then. Like, it's just such a fun match for me.
So some of these bigger matches I have not seen. This is now going on the list.
Yes. I think you should definitely go back and watch. And my friend Ray actually did this recently. I think you should go back to like 98 and watch every single Raw leading up to WrestleMania. It's just great. Like,
okay,
it's such a good time for wrestling.
Raw 1998
forward.
Yes. Like 98 leading up to that WrestleMania, and then 99 through that WrestleMania. I think this is good stuff. Like, for various reasons.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so Angel, that's when you and I were like, you know, that's like right there tail end of high school. So I can attest. Yeah, there was a lot that went on. That's a lot of the DX generation stuff.
Yes, just good attitude era stuff that is, you know what I mean? Just wild. Like, obviously it wouldn't be anything on TV now, but just like wild, crazy. And you're like, what a weird time for wrestling at this time. You know what I mean? Just cool
they
stuff.
They pushed the M rating hard.
Yes.
Hard.
And it really felt like they were trying to compete with like other popular TV shows at that time, like MTV, you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of like football stars making appearances, a lot of music, you know, like Limp Bizkit, I think around that time played The Undertaker to the Ring, like live at WrestleMania. Just a lot of pop culture stuff during that time too.
if I'm not mistaken, that's the same time, like for WCW side. That's when Rodman, Dennis Rodman was around, right? And funny about that, Starcast in September, they're gonna have Rodman as a guest.
I just saw that. I was like, whoa, when's the last time that he was asked to do a wrestling convention? You know, like that's pretty, it's different, it's cool.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Just pick a point and watch.
Yeah. Wrestling is always fun. Like,
yes.
It makes my day better.
It does. And I like when people can watch it and enjoy it and not get caught up in, well, it was better at this time, or that was better, or this person with this, or no, that person deserves it more than this. And like, just enjoy it. Like it's fun. It doesn't have to be, wrestling doesn't always have to be one way or the wrong way. Yes, there's definitely wrong ways, but you know, there's a little bit of something for everyone. That's the way I like to look at it.
I agree. It's one of the reasons why I like going to indie shows, because not every indie show has like this long drawn out story. It could just be two people that can go in there and brawl.
Yes.
And I'm for it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have Impact at the end of the month in Toronto. And then it's September 8th and September 9th in White Plains, New York. And I don't know that the last time that Impact was in White Plains, New York. So that's pretty cool. And it's pretty cool for me because I have cousins that live in that area. So I'll get to be able to go see them.
Cool.
But it's it marks the 1,000th, I believe, episode of Impact. So that's a big one for us.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Big deal. Awesome.
Yeah.
And kind of like I told you when we saw you at PWX and you fought John Davis, you guys were slapping the shit out of each other, man. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, you are such a beast. Yeah.
So here's a little tidbit about that match. Legit didn't know I was wrestling him until right before the show started. So imagine that on top of everything else. I was like, oh, okay, but I have to wrestle Effie first. I have to think mentally. I have to be there first. And then after the match with Effie, I'm like, I got to wrestle John Davis now. Like, what? Like, one does not prepare for that. It's just a thing that happens. But I would really actually like to have another match with John. It was the first time we ever wrestled each other. So obviously like a year and some changes gone by now. So I would really like to do another one with him.
You should tell Ethan Case and make it happen at Title Belt Pro.
Yes. And I think we should all tweet about it too. Everyone should tweet about it.
Yes. I'm for it. Oh, that would be awesome. I think we'll make that. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll mention it as well for sure.
Yeah. I actually saw you recently. Well, we saw you at the Title Belt Pro show, but then before that, I saw you at the DPW versus Elevation Pro show in Lexington.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. You beat the snot out of Caitlin Marie, and I loved it. I took my husband to that show who doesn't watch wrestling, and he was just like, oh, my God. I don't think he was prepared. But he was
That's
very
the reaction that I love getting, where you're just like, oh, like this is what's happening. Like, I think that's always like a fun reaction for me because, you know, everyone has their own ideas and thoughts of what women's wrestling is. And then I always like to kind of be the surprise there for that, or, you know, what they're expecting. It's maybe a little different. So I always like that.
Yeah.
Oh, your pinned tweet from like 2021, the one that shows up the moment someone goes to your page. Anyone who wants to know anything about you should just watch that, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh my goodness, she's gonna crush somebody. Like every person in that, you're just ragdolling them all over the place, and I'm like, this is awesome.
I love wrestling. Like, this is so fantastic.
Nothing else like it. Yeah, wrestling's amazing.
Yeah, so that wraps us up. And like I said, appreciate you being on here. Excited, especially because we have Caleb, now we have you, and then we're going to get George, and you're connected to all those guys. So
yes.
So thank you very much. Yeah, we'll looking forward to seeing you again, and we'll definitely try to get that John Davis match going.
Awesome. Yes, we have to.
Awesome. All right, have a great one.
Thanks. Y'all take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.